My cousin framed me, stole my college fund and turned my family against me. Years later, she begged for forgiveness, but my reply made her cry. When I was 18, my cousin, let's call her Jade, decided to falsely accuse me of sexual assault. Unfortunately, my entire family believed her story. Jade is 4 years older than me, and we used to be close when we were kids, but eventually, we grew apart. She is my uncle's daughter, and he is a single father. My mom's younger brother, my uncle, got married to his ex-wife when they were very young because he got her pregnant. However, she ended up cheating on him, and that marriage ended within a couple of years. She tried to stay in touch with Jade for a few years, but eventually, she moved away with her new boyfriend, and since then, they have had no contact. My uncle was a respectable man, the kind of person who would struggle through everything on his own but never accept help from anyone. He was a single father, and it was admirable how he dedicated his entire life to raising his daughter, so much so that he never got serious with anyone else after his divorce. Until Jade was 18, her father took care of everything and even had a college fund set aside for her. But after that, when she said she wanted to continue studying, her father told her that he had done everything in his power to fund her education, but now she would have to be on her own because he needed to look out for his own retirement as well. I think that was a fair way to deal with the situation because, if she wanted to pursue higher studies, that should have been on her own dime, not her father's, as she was old enough to be working. However, she did not agree and believed her dad should continue to fund her education for as long as she wanted to study. They had many fights about it. As a result, she spent a lot of time with my family because, every time she fought with her father, she would come to my mom and vent to her. I personally thought my uncle was being quite reasonable, but I never said anything about it because Jade came over to speak to my mom, not me, so it was not my place to comment. One day, she came home unannounced, as she usually did, and my parents were not home. I don't remember exactly where they were, they had probably gone out for a party, but I remember being the only person at home. When she showed up, I instantly told her that my mother was not there, and I thought she would leave after that. Instead, she decided to sit in the living room because, apparently, she just needed some time away from her father after they had gotten into yet another horrible fight. To be honest, I'd heard enough about her fights with her father because she was very loud when she came over to talk to my mother, and I wasn't interested in hearing it again. Since my mom wasn't there, she started venting to me about it. I think she expected me to be as sympathetic toward her as my mother had been, but I had very different opinions on the situation. When she started ranting about her father again, I cut her off and told her that my mother might have fed into her delusions, but I thought what my uncle was doing was perfectly reasonable. I told her that he had dedicated his entire life to raising her to be a competent and capable independent woman, so now it was her chance to prove him right. If she really wanted to pursue a master's degree and then a doctorate, she would have to do what everyone else does and pay for it herself. She was also a STEM major, and I knew that whatever job she would eventually find would be enough for her to support herself. All she had to do was try. She kept insisting that it would be too much for her to handle, that she couldn't work and study at the same time. So, I told her that if she had already made up her mind that it was impossible for her to start working and continue her education, then maybe she should give up on higher studies. It was unfair of her to demand that her father continue to pay for everything, especially after he had done so much for her. Instead of being grateful, she was acting like he was the villain. I guess she hadn't expected that reality check. As soon as I said this, she started yelling at me, calling me a horrible human being and saying I would never understand what she was going through because I was a privileged brat who didn't deserve the support I had. If I'm being honest, I thought she was more of a privileged brat than I was, but whatever. She yelled at me for a couple of minutes and then ran out of the house crying. I didn't go after her because, as I said, I wasn't interested in hearing her cry about the same thing over and over again. However, I hadn't expected what happened next. The next day, I was accused of sexual assault by her, and my entire world turned upside down because of that one accusation. Now, when people are finally finding out that she lied about everything, my family is blowing up my phone after not having spoken to me for the past 3 years. The day after Jade and I had that fight, my parents woke me up in the morning. I still remember everything as clearly as yesterday because it was probably the most traumatizing day of my life. They woke me up, saying that my uncle and Jade were there to see me, and apparently, it was very important. I had no idea what had happened by then. But once I came downstairs, Jade started screaming about how I had sexually assaulted her the previous night and began faking a breakdown. My uncle looked extremely disturbed, and my parents were also very shocked. Since she was not in the condition to speak, at least, she was pretending she wasn't, my uncle did all the talking. He told my parents that when she had come back home that day after fighting with him, she had been crying relentlessly. Eventually, he managed to get out of her what had happened. She told him that, since my parents weren't home, I lured her in and then did what she accused me of. He couldn't even look at me, and my parents were also avoiding looking at me. I tried to protest and claim that I didn't do it, but nobody was listening to me. It was horrible because, even though I hadn't done anything, people were already treating me like a criminal right in front of me. My parents started begging for forgiveness and told my uncle not to report me or go public with this, saying they were ready to do anything to fix the situation. No matter how hard I cried out, my parents and uncle completely ignored my existence in the room. It got so frustrating that I picked up a vase out of frustration and threw it at the wall just so they would pay attention to me. That backfired because my dad lost his temper, grabbed me by the arm, dragged me to my room, and shut me inside. I kept banging against the door until my fists and arms started hurting because there was no way I was going to let Jade get away with this. It was a huge lie, and it might have ruined my reputation. Unfortunately, my dad didn't let me out of the room until my uncle and Jade had left. When he finally opened the door, I started crying immediately and tried to tell them that I hadn't done anything of the sort. They told me that they had watched the security footage from the cameras outside our house and knew that Jade had come over the previous evening and had run out of the house crying a couple of minutes later. Judging by the way she had run out crying, they chose to believe her. They said that Jade had no reason to lie about what had happened and told me that they were ashamed of the kind of son they had raised. My mother was in tears and couldn't say anything, but my dad told me that, with great difficulty, they had managed to get my uncle and Jade to promise not to take any legal action against me. However, this meant they had to promise them something in return. Jade and my uncle demanded that I be sent far away so she wouldn't have to see me around and relive the traumatic experience. After much discussion, my dad decided to send me to live with my great-uncle in Iowa, who was the least liked family member because of his terrible attitude and anger issues. My dad knew I didn't like him at all, but that was the furthest place from my family, and my dad told me it was the only solution. I just had to accept it. Not only were they sending me away, but they had also told Jade that they were going to take away the college fund they had set aside for me and give it all to her just to keep it quiet. I tried to protest, but there was no talking to them. Eventually, I gave up because I didn't see the point of anything anymore since even my own parents didn't seem to trust me. I was also able to figure out that Jade had probably accused me falsely simply because she wanted something to hold against my parents so she could extract money from them, as her own father would never accept help of any kind, especially financial, not even from his own family. Within a couple of days of that incident, I was packed up and ready to leave. My parents didn't even bother to hug me or wish me goodbye. For the next couple of days, they pretended I wasn't even at home, and I was under house arrest, so I couldn't say goodbye to any of my friends. They had taken away my phone and told me that if I didn't go off the grid and practically disappear from everybody's life, they would go public themselves, and then my life would be ruined. I was forced to cut ties with everyone from my past and move away from everything I knew, all because of a lie Jade told. A couple of days after that incident, my great-uncle showed up to pick me up, and I was sent off to live with him in a sort of exile. Since then, I have had no contact with anyone from my past, not my family nor my friends, and I've had to completely restart my life. When I first moved in with my great-uncle, it was very difficult for me to adjust to his ways because he would constantly taunt me throughout the day. Even though he didn't know why I'd been kicked out, the fact that I had been was enough for him to hold it against me and mock me about it. I've already mentioned his terrible attitude and anger issues, so I had to walk on eggshells around him. I knew my parents were sending him money every month, but he still pretended like he was doing me a huge favor by letting me stay with him. I knew I wouldn't be able to live with him, and after the first few weeks, I decided there was no point in crying over spilled milk. My parents had cut me off, and I was forbidden from having contact with anyone from my previous life, so all I could do was make the best of the situation. I started applying for jobs. I couldn't go to college anyway, as even though I had been accepted into the college of my choice, I didn't have the money or means to attend. After a few weeks of moping around and a couple of interviews, I was finally able to get a job as a warehouse worker. It didn't pay much, and I was miserable because of how physically draining the job was, but at least when I got my first salary, I was able to move out of my horrible great-uncle's place. I was lucky enough to have a couple of coworkers around the same age as me who were also struggling with money. We became close friends, and the three of us decided to pitch in and get an apartment together. That's how I was able to move out of my great-uncle's house. I didn't even bother to tell him because I knew that for him, it would be good riddance. After I moved out from his place, I never heard from any of my family members again for the past 3 years. I have been living with the same people I got my first apartment with, and we have all been incredibly lucky. After working for a few months in the warehouse, the three of us decided to continue looking for better opportunities since we were always too physically exhausted. Over the past 3 years, we have changed many jobs and have been putting aside money because all three of us want to go to college. They have also had their fair share of struggles, but that's not relevant. Right now, I'm working in sales and making a decent amount. I've been thinking about reapplying to colleges. As for my two friends, they are also doing well, and we have recently moved into a bigger apartment in a much nicer neighborhood. Of course, now that things have started looking up for me, my family thinks it's the perfect time to try and get back into my life. As I said, I have had no contact with them for the past 3 years, so I was quite surprised when my dad reached out to me through email a few days ago. I'm not active on any social media since that was one of the rules my parents set when they kicked me out, and I had been very paranoid about them spreading the story and ruining my reputation and life if I went against the rules, so I stuck to it. My email address hasn't changed in the past 3 years, and I have never blocked them anywhere, even though they have. I was very surprised to hear from him because, after everything that happened, I genuinely hadn't expected it. When I read the email, it was basically an apology for everything that had happened over the past 3 years, and he wanted me to give him my address and contact info so he could reach out to me properly. He had provided his own contact info as well in case I wanted to reach out to him on my own time. The reason he was apologizing and trying to reach out to me in the first place was because Jade had finally realized it was time to tell everyone the truth about what had really happened. She is on her deathbed, and I guess she finally developed a conscience or something. For whatever reason, she decided to tell her father the truth about what had happened, and he had spoken to my parents. After learning the truth, my parents decided to reach out to me once again. Regarding what has happened with Jade, she's been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it's very unlikely that she's going to make it. She's been suffering for the past 8 months, and her condition is only deteriorating, even though treatment is ongoing. No, she wasn't even able to make good use of all the money she received from my college fund after she screwed me over. She wasted it all with her terrible life choices. Instead of pursuing her master's degree, she decided to take a gap year with all that money and traveled the world to expand her horizons and truly find herself. She came back around a year and a half ago, having already eaten away at more than half of her savings because she wanted to live luxuriously. By the time she came back, she had very little money left and started asking my parents for more, but my uncle threatened to cut her off if she took any more money from them. She was forced to give up on the idea of college because, with whatever money she had left, she couldn't afford a master's degree without working, which she didn't want. She still had some money left, so she could have put it to good use and at least worked to build more capital. However, I guess that year-long vacation had made her lazy, and she was already pretty spoiled, so she went on to waste even more of her money by buying an apartment and continuing to live beyond her means, even though she still hadn't started looking for a job. Finally, she was able to find a job about a year ago, but then she was diagnosed with cancer and had to quit. Now she has had to sell the apartment and everything else she bought because she needs the money. I don't want to come off as insensitive, but after reading what had happened with her, I felt really great because she didn't need any enemies since she was her own biggest enemy. Once I was done reading the email, I had to think about whether I wanted to get back in touch with my parents or not. I decided to speak to my friends about it. This also meant that I finally had to tell them the truth about why I had been kicked out of my house by my parents because, initially, I had only told them that we had had disagreements, which is why they had kicked me out. I hadn't told them the real reason. After that email, I discussed it with my friends because I didn't have anybody else to speak to about it. I told them everything about Jade and how she had lied and thrown me under the bus. Then I told them about my parents and how they had believed her over me. Not only had they kicked me out and sent me to live with the worst relative possible, but they had also forced me to cut everyone from my past off and threatened to ruin my reputation themselves if I went against them. My friends could hardly believe what I was telling them while I was narrating everything. After I was done, they told me that there was no way they would get back in touch with my parents and forgive them if they were in my place. I'm taking it seriously because it's coming from my closest friends, pretty much the only ones I have at this point. I wouldn't have thought about it much if they had just told me not to get back in touch with my parents and to let it go, but they think I should speak up about what happened to me. For the past 3 years, I have been living in fear, even though I haven't done anything. They're right. I've had to give up so much of my life because somebody told a lie about me, and my parents went along with it. If I want to reclaim my life, I need to speak up about what happened. Before doing that, I decided to tell my parents that I was going to go public with the story and the real version of what happened because people deserve to know. I don't really care if Jade is on her deathbed. She ruined my life, and now I'm going to reclaim it. I texted the number my dad had sent me and told him what I was going to do because I already had screenshots of the email he sent me, confirming that Jade had been lying. Now I could post about it on social media and, forget about posting, I could finally have social media again. I wasn't asking him for permission, but I guess he misread the situation. Now he, my mother, and even my uncle are blowing up my phone, requesting me not to do this because Jade has already been through a lot and is suffering like never before. They say she has received her karma, and I don't need to punish her even more. They want me not to go public with the truth because that's going to ruin her reputation. They think I can come back and return to everything I left behind without telling people the truth about why I left in the first place, and nobody's going to question it. They're right, I can't do that, but I don't think I want to. Jade took away a huge part of my life, and even my friends think it's perfectly reasonable for me to post the truth. It's not to get back at her, it's so people know what happened. I don't think there are many reasonable excuses to disappear from everybody's life for 3 years and then come back again. Besides, I don't even plan on going back to the city. I'm content enough here, but I do miss my friends and many of my relatives who were good to me, so I think at least they deserve to know the truth. My parents and my uncle have been blowing up my phone relentlessly, which is the only thing stopping me from posting. Jade is apparently not in good shape at all, and they have been practically begging me not to post about anything. So, would I be the asshole if I went ahead and posted the truth about why I had to leave everything behind for 3 years and exposed my cousin, even though she's on her deathbed right now? I did it, guys. I thought about it for a really long time and consulted my friends repeatedly. They told me the same thing. Jade and my family had taken away 3 years of my life that I could have spent normally, but I had to live in fear because of them, even though I hadn't done anything. It would be perfectly reasonable for me to retaliate, regardless of what condition Jade was in. Many comments here also believe the same thing. To be honest, at the end of the day, it was my own decision, but knowing that most people would back me up on this made me feel a lot better. It has been a week since my original post, and last night, I put up my post narrating everything that has happened in my life and why exactly I had been off the grid and out of everybody's life for the past 3 years. Everyone who used to know me, including my friends and relatives, has reached out to let me know that they are there for me and that they have missed me greatly for the past 3 years. I honestly believe it because I did receive many emails from people in the first couple of months, but apparently, after that, my parents told everyone not to go looking for me because I wanted to be left alone. They said I had been through something very traumatizing and needed time and space to heal. After the first few months of no contact, people stopped trying to reach out to me because they wanted to give me my space. All my friends told me that they had asked my parents about my whereabouts several times, but they had never revealed it, so they couldn't get in touch with me. Even many of my relatives told me that they had waited patiently for me to surface again. It made me cry a little, seeing how nobody had forgotten me and how ready everyone was to welcome me back. Most importantly, people have said that they always found Jade very shady, but this was low even by her standards. My parents and my uncle have had nothing to say so far, and I'm hoping they stay out because I really don't want to speak to them. As for myself, I feel much freer and lighter now that all of this is off my chest. Speaking up about what happened to me was a good choice, and I don't regret anything. It has been a couple of days since I made that post, and my parents reached out to me yesterday to let me know that they are really disappointed in me because they had only requested one thing: that I let sleeping dogs lie and come up with some excuse as to why I was missing for 3 years without telling everyone the truth about what had happened. They said Jade deserves some peace and quiet given her condition. Apparently, after my post, she has lost pretty much all of her friends, and not even anyone from the family is willing to speak to her anymore, as if it's my fault. It was shocking that even now they care more about what Jade is going through than what their own son has been through in the past. An apology is never going to cut it. I told them that I didn't care about their disappointment anymore. They had let me down on multiple levels, and now they had no right to expect anything from me. If Jade deserves peace and quiet right now just because she's sick with cancer, I could also say the same thing about myself. When they kicked me out and sent me to live with my horrible great-uncle, I was just 18, and yet they had no sympathy or mercy for me. At least I'm telling the truth. Jade lied and got away with it for 3 years, so now I'm going to reclaim my life, and I'm not going to allow anyone to try and make me feel guilty about it. I told them never to contact me again and that the only people they should be disappointed in are themselves. Then I finally blocked them, something I should have done a long time ago, but I was scared and confused. However, I think speaking up about what has happened to me has given me a sense of closure, and now I don't feel the pressure to deal with my parents anymore. They and their expectations can take a hike for all I care. I decided to finally visit my friends and family after 3 long years this weekend. It was pretty much the best decision I had ever made. I also took my roommates along with me for moral support more than anything else. To be honest, they have become so close that we're like brothers now, and I wanted them to meet my friends as well. Everyone's been getting along great, and my friends seem overjoyed to see me. I'm actually living with one of them right now because all of them got offended when I said I was going to stay in a hotel. I'm going to go back in a couple of days, but my heart is so full of joy that I can't even explain it in words. My roommates and my old friends are all living together in one of my friends' houses, and we are having the time of our lives. I've also managed to meet quite a few of my relatives, and they've told me that they have cut off my parents, my uncle, and Jade, and they don't plan on having anything to do with these people ever again. It makes me really happy that, at the end of the day, people will always take a stand for what is right. I'm glad I'm surrounded by people like this who didn't forget me and love me more than my parents do.